the loophole means closing the loophole, so to speak, means that you're going to be basically trying to impose that requirement on every private transfer of a firearm. And there's another problem with it, and that is we're talking under the assumption that the current background check system works. And as a matter of fact, it doesn't. The dirty little secret is that criminals already know how to get around it, and that is you use a straw purchaser. If I've got a criminal record and I want to get a firearm, I just have you, my buddy, go purchase the firearm for me with your clean record, and then I get the gun from you. And it's done all the time. There have been many articles written about this, about how having a straw purchaser is what it's called. Even though that's technically illegal, it's done all the time, and it's really hard to detect or to prosecute. And so, the idea that somehow we're going to stop criminals from getting guns with expanded background checks is completely illusory. But the people who will comply with it are you and me, John. We will, because we want to follow the law, and it's going to be a huge inconvenience and burden on just normal friends and family, passing a firearm or selling a firearm to one another. And so, but the criminals aren't going to follow it anyway. So again, and let's not forget, it would have done nothing for the El Paso or Dayton shooters who passed their background checks. And by the way, the San Bernardino shooter of 2015 did the straw purchaser thing and had somebody else buy the gun. So we're sold this bill of goods that, hey, we're going to stop these shootings with expanding background checks, when expanding background checks has nothing.
I don't think that's what the president's position is. I think the president's position is just what I said. If you're going to have background checks, then make them background checks. Don't have the loophole to get rid of the whole damn thing, because it's not going to stop strawmen. But then let's get to the red flag law. And what the president, Kris, has said is clear. He said, look, this whack job nutball in Dayton who was posting on social media a rape list and a kill list, had there been a red flag law federally, there's no way this guy would have been able to buy a gun. There's no way possible. Now we get to the guy in Parkland, Kris Kobach. The cops went to this kid's house in the trailer 32 times. I mean, this guy had a problem, right? Either case, you have a red flag law, they're not going to get a gun. And what most of the red flag law legislation is, like the one that's being proposed by Republicans in Virginia, I'll just give you that as an example because that's where I live, is you can get your gun taken away or not buy it for 2 weeks, for 14 days. Then it's got to be signed by a judge. If you don't have enough evidence, it isn't signed. You can go buy all the guns you want. You can go buy an arsenal, right? Doesn't matter. You get 2 weeks. It's no different than when you go to a judge and ask for a restraining order, all right? You don't get a hearing that day. Somebody will sign the restraining order for 7 days, and then you got to go in front of a judge and see if that can go forward. But, I mean, both those shootings might not have happened had you had a red flag law. And I think that's what the president is saying. Let's give it a shot. Maybe it isn't going to help, but maybe it is. How do you respond to that, Kris?
Well, I think, first of all, you're reading way too much into what the president said. If you're going to base your interpretation of his position based on tweets and other things, he tweeted yesterday, I think it was, or maybe the day before, he made fun of Chris Cuomo, who had his rant and said some very threatening things that were captured on video. And Trump said, well, it looks like he would lose his firearms under a red flag law, which was, he was essentially saying, Trump was, these red flag laws, if you do anything that indicates you're a little bit angry, an ordinary citizen might lose their firearms. But here's the problem with red flag laws as they have been drafted so far. And I've looked in detail at the statutes that exist in the blue states that have them. The red flag laws take away your firearms. They come in and confiscate your firearms without any formal hearing where you've been able to present your side of the story. It's an ex parte hearing, meaning you're not there. And then when you do have a final hearing where you try to get your guns back, you have to prove you're not a danger, which is proving a negative, and they don't use the normal due process standard of criminal trials, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. Instead, it's by preponderance of evidence that you have to prove. And the stuff that can be used against you is one of the things, for example, is unsafe storage of firearms, careless storage of firearms. Well, that means anything other than a safe. a lot of people keep a gun somewhere in the bedroom, handy, not in a safe, just in case there's an intruder in the middle of the night, and that's perfectly reasonable. But that could be used against you. Do you drink beer? That could be used against you. Have you posted something angry on Facebook before? That could be used against you. And so the standards are
making
so
the assumption
low
that, Kris,
for depriving
you're
someone of
really
their
stretching
constitutional right to keep and bear arms, and then of course you can take them away without you even having a say in it. So I'm not saying, John, that you couldn't have a red flag law that was constitutional. I think they could be drafted better, but the ones we have right now are horrible.
All right, so let's agree that, look, what you can't do nothing is I think what everybody's saying. And I get your piece saying, you know, you want to create a law when there's a crisis. I mean, look, Kris, this has been going on a long time. Here's the problem Republicans have, and I deal in reality on our show, and I think you know that. I deal in political reality. Kris, here's the problem with losing suburban women as Republicans, and it's happening all over the nation right now as we're talking. Because when you've got moms that are going out to the department store and they're buying backpacks with bulletproof vests for fifth graders, Kris, you got a problem. And I get the mental illness. I get the parents. I get the whole thing. I get all that argument. I get that guns don't shoot people, the people with guns. I get all that, right? We all agree. I'm Second Amendment. I own guns. I don't want any of my rights infringed. But I also deal in political reality, and so does the president, whose instincts have proven politically, Kris, to be pretty sound. Nobody's going to fight with that. Like them or not, tweet or not, they're pretty sound. And here's what he said. Suburban moms are getting nervous, right? So Republicans, in order to keep them, have to do something that is common sense. Closing a loophole for a background check makes sense to me. Common sense. Not being able to sell a gun to somebody posting a rape list on social media or having cops visit his house 32 times. Common sense. And your argument is, well, that can be abused. It can go forward. You know, you're making the assumption that judges are just going to willy-nilly sign everything. It's no different than a restraining order. That would be like saying, if you get a restraining order, you're infringing on my constitutional rights of free movement and assembly. No.
Well,
I got a restraining order because somebody.
The restraining order is different. A restraining order is.
But you got to have due process.
A battered woman says, this guy is going to pose a threat to me, and the judge says, ex parte, okay, you have a restraining order. You can't come within 200 yards of her. That I have no constitutional right to go within 200 yards of anyone.
Until you get due process.
I do have a constitutional right to possess my firearms.
I understand that, but you're taking the position that Republicans should do nothing and just hope things work out. I don't think that's a good strategy.
I'm not saying doing nothing. I'm saying that if we do a red flag law, it's got to be completely different than the ones that we've seen in the states so far, because those, first and foremost, you should not be able to seize someone's firearms without him being present and able to offer a defense. I mean, that is a dangerous state in America, where we would get to a point where guns can be seized without you even having any basis for defending yourself, all based on, the other thing is, it's the testimony not of a family member, but of anybody who have ever lived with the person. Disgruntled boyfriend, disgruntled girlfriend, etc. So, yeah, it's possible a red flag law could be designed so that it respects due process and there's actually an opportunity to defend oneself and has the right standard. But you also mentioned politics, John. I agree. The president and the Republicans generally do want to make sure that suburban women are certainly getting a message that they can identify with. But on the other hand, we have to remember this. The president won in 2016 by a grand total of 80,000 votes in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin combined. And those states are very pro-gun states that if the president signs on and jumps on the expanded background checks bandwagon, he's going to end up losing a lot of his base. So whatever he may gain, if there's anything, among suburban housewives or suburban women, he may very well lose among his base of gun owners. So it's not at all clear that it's the right political move.
I absolutely don't buy that argument. I absolutely don't buy that argument because, look, sometimes you have to give a little in order to protect everything else you have. Because if you go state by state, you take some of these states with a lot of the whack jobs that they've the Democrats have elected, if they take power, I mean, this is going to be child's play to the gun grab that they're going to do. All right, let me get to Al Letizia.
Hi, Kris. This is Al. Hey, in New Hampshire, the motto on our automobile license plates is "Live free or die."
Live free or die. Yep.
Yeah. Hey, a lot of what you say resonates with me as far as liberty and freedom, and as a gun owner myself, and someone who is here to use the gun to protect my family and friends and others. I hear what you're saying. I also hear what John's saying, and I guess the thing I would ask you is there something, in short, that you would advise that would be sensible, some type of a sensible approach beyond what you see here that is problematic? Is there something?
I think there is something that can be done. So one area where our current background checks aren't as good as they should be is there's not enough data in the system. Some states haven't put in information about people who've been adjudicated mentally ill. And that's really up to the states. And so, the president can certainly lean on the states and publicly call out the states that aren't getting that data in. But, it's not really something the senators can do. And the problem here is, the U.S. Senate, they all want to say, look, we did something. Well, it might not be their job to do something. Maybe the actors who can really make a difference are in the states. So that's one thing I think needs to be done for sure, is to make sure we have all of those records in the system, and including the federal government. There was one noteworthy case during the Obama administration where the Air Force had failed to put records of someone's adjudicated mental illness into the system, and that guy subsequently got a gun and shot someone. So I think that's where the improvement can be made.
And are states right now able to see each other's data?
I don't believe, I'm not 100% sure what the answer is there, but I think the answer is no. I believe the states put the data in, and then the U.S. Department of Justice is the entity that actually does the check, when the gun store, dials in the information. So I don't think a state government can look at another state's data, but everybody gets to use the data regardless of which state the purchase is in. All of the state's data is in the system. All
the state's data goes to a national database?
Correct, and that's the InstaCheck system that the CJIS agency within the Department of Justice operates.
Yeah, and one thing I was thinking, John, when we were talking about guns, is if you substitute the word gun for selling an automobile. So if I want to sell an automobile to you and I apply that same rule, would I be required to do a background check on you to make sure you're not a dangerous driver?
No, but the DMV has already done that. So if you're going to sell, you can sell me the car, but I can't drive it legally without a license. So I've already gone through DMV. I haven't had a DUI. If I did, I got it back. I don't have enough speeding. I have a license that some state has issued me, so I've already passed that with the DMV.
But look, it's not going to stop a criminal from driving the car down the road anyway.
I know,
right?
But I get, look, all of us get all sides of the argument, Kris, and of course you and I are in ideological lockstep on just about everything. I'm going to go with Trump's political instincts. I mean, I've been with him from the beginning. A lot of times when he did things, people would scratch their heads, and it turned out. So I'm going to just go with his instincts here. I think he's right, and
I think you might be he's just made one comment, and he often does that, and he'll do that to kind of prepare the political ground, and he does it in a very deft and effective way. So I'm not at all sure that the president has made a firm commitment that he wants universal background checks. I think he may just be, throwing a few bones out there to see what the reaction of the other side is.
Well, we'll see what plays out. But here's what I do know. I just last night after you texted me, I looked. Somebody had sent me that Salon did a hit piece on you, so of course I went there.
Yes, of course.
And now I'm absolutely convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, Kris Kobach, that you're going to be the senatorial nominee in Kansas in 2020, and you're going to win. Because when Salon is going after you, saying, "Please nominate this man," you're going to be the. I mean, you're in a select. When you get a hit piece by Salon, which is a complete left-wing rag joke, and they're saying you're the please nominate this man. You're the only Republican that can't win. I'm like saying, yeah, exactly. So tell us about your race in Kansas.
I appreciate you pointing that out. And I think regardless of what our positions are on this particular question, you got to have conservatives in the U.S. Senate who are willing to tell the majority leader, hey, we don't just sit there quietly if you think that this is the right position. There have to be people with backbone who stand up, and that's part of the reason I'm running. And if listeners want to check out my website or support our race in Kansas, which is one of, I think it might be the only open seat in 2020. Pat Roberts is vacating it.
The only open seat. That's correct.
Yeah, it's KrisKobach.com, Kriskobach.com.
I think you're going to be the nominee, and I have no doubt if you are the nominee, you are going to win that seat. And I appreciate your time, Kris, as always. It was great spending some time with you last week at the border in Sunland Park and seeing all the great work you guys have done in that wall. That was really fantastic. Hey, one last question before we go, because I know you're running for Senate, but we've been kicking this around all day. What do you think of this Jeffrey Epstein deal? I mean, do you think is a stance or?
I wish I had some special insight there. I don't know. It just seems so odd that the suicide watch wasn't in place or wasn't being done at the time. Boy, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, usually, the penitentiaries are run, like clockwork. So really hard to say without more information.
Well, the Fox was reporting a little earlier that the guards fell asleep, and then they falsified. I mean, you shouldn't laugh at this.
It happens in the movie in real life too.
They fell asleep, and they falsified records. Guards fell asleep. I mean, isn't that like the old westerns where the guard would fall asleep and you'd get a hook or something and get the key off the door and open your jail cell? It's like, do guards really fall asleep in the middle of a prison watch? And this kind of thing happens. All right, final thing. You're running for Senate. Hong Kong. What do you think will happen?
Boy, that's a tough one. I mean, it's a really interesting question. It's a really interesting part of the world. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know what's going to happen next.
All right. Kris Kobach running for U.S. Senate in Kansas. We predict he's going to be the nominee and he's going to win. And when Salon does a hit piece on you all these months out because they're scared you're going to win, that is, you might as well go to Las Vegas and bet Kobach and take the odds because he is going to win. That's what I'm going to do. Hey, Kris, always good to have you. We have to have you on more. Thank you
for take care.
All you do. All right, buddy. John Fredericks Radio Network.